when I was growing up, I grew up in the Bible Belt of Texas, and my dad's mom, my grandmother, was Baptist, and she was always talking, pointing out things that were happening that were a sign of the end times. And the older she got, the more signs there were, and the closer the end times were, which I guess chronologically is true. But so I grew up with that, and also kind of the community around me, and I was anxious about it. The things that were talked about were things that made me anxious, not the joyful parts of Jesus coming back, but the things that make you anxious. And so throughout the Gospels, there are several that are similar to this one, where we talk about that the people who are Jesus's will recognize Jesus. You'll recognize Jesus. You won't fall to the false prophets. You'll know Jesus, and he knows you. And so about 10 years ago, I was in a Bible study. I believe we were studying the Gospel of Matthew, and there's a part in Matthew where it talks about the end times. And as I was contemplating this, there was a revelation to me that gave me comfort, that I've kept with me for comfort. And Jesus says, my sheep hear my voice. We know Jesus's voice. And so what gave me comfort as I contemplated that may seem a little strange, but when I'm looking for my mom in a store, it never fails that when you're looking for your mom, when you find her, it's the back of her, right? When you're going down the aisles or whatever. When I'm looking for my mom in the store, I always know when I see her. I always know that it's her. If I have to take a second look, it wasn't her. I've even tested it where I'm like, no, that's not mom. No, that's not mom. No, wait. Yeah, no, that wasn't mom, right? I always know the first time that I see my mom. And I always know my mom's voice and my dad's voice. It always cracks me up when my dad used to call me and leave a message, and he'd say, Kendrah, this is your dad. Yeah, I know it's you. We know our parents' voice. We know the voice of the person who would lay down their life for us. We know the voice of the person who took care of us, whether that was our mother and father, whether it was an aunt, uncle, or grandparents. We know the voice of the person who loves us most. And we know the shape of them, right? We know who they are, and we always recognize them. And the same is true of Jesus. We know Jesus's voice. We hear it in our heads. We hear it in our hearts. We will know when we see Jesus that it's Jesus. And we'll know that when we hear Jesus that it's Jesus. We will not be bought by false prophets or the like, because we will know him, just like we know those people who took care of us, who would have laid down their lives for us, the ones who nurtured us, and whose voices we've heard in the womb, likely, but since we were very young, for sure. And so that's one of the things that gave me comfort, and one of the things that I thought of when I read this passage. And so the second thing is that Jesus knows us. Jesus knows his sheep. And I grew up in an agriculture town, so I knew some people who raised sheep, but I know cattle better than I know sheep. And Robert's mom also raises longhorns. And when we first met, and she would talk to me about, the cattle, and she's like thinking that I can tell which brown one she's talking about and which white one she's talking about. I'm like, I don't know which one, but you just shake your head and go along with it, right? After about 20 years, I know which brown one she's talking about and which white one she's talking about. She knows, which calf came from which heifer. And so I understand now. But Jesus knows us just like the shepherd knows the sheep. We all probably think that sheep look all the same, but to the shepherd, they don't. The shepherd knows every single one of them. He knows which ones need attention. He knows which ones are going to be giving birth. He knows which one he's looking at. Just like Jesus knows which of us he's looking at. And sometimes we say, Jesus knows us better than we know ourselves, or God knows us better than we know ourselves. We likely all know ourselves that well. We just ignore those parts, right? But Jesus accepts us all. He accepts every part of us, even the parts that we want to pretend like we don't know about ourselves. Jesus knows us through and through. Just like the shepherd and the rancher know their animals through and through. And they also know, the animals also know, in our time, they know the sound of the truck that feeds them and whoever's in that truck, right? But they also know the rancher. They know the shepherd's voice. When we yell, come on, they know, right? They know who it is. They know the rancher best, or those who have been around them. They know, but they come to the rancher quickest, right? They know that person that feeds them, that takes care of them. And those animals are the shepherd or the rancher's livelihood. But they also, the life of the sheep is also very important to the shepherd. And so Jesus knows us. He knows us through and through, and he recognizes each one of us. He knit us together in our mother's womb. He knew us even before we were in our mother's womb. And so we will know his voice. We will know him, and he knows us. But the third part of that verse is that, and they follow me. They follow me. It's not just that we know who Jesus is. We follow Jesus. We follow him. And in this passage, we're in John 10. And Jesus has done miracles. He's done healings. He's done teachings. And the Pharisees and the temple leaders are saying, show us a sign. Are you the Messiah? Tell us if you're the Messiah. And Jesus is like, I've told you. And I've done things. You refuse to pay attention. You refuse to recognize how I'm fulfilling the scriptures, right? The Pharisees and the temple leaders, they knew the scriptures. So they should have recognized Jesus' preaching and teaching. They should have recognized the signs. And this is not a doubt like Thomas or like some of the other disciples that we see, the doubt that we may have sometimes. This is I want proof. And since you haven't given me the proof that I want, I just don't believe. I just don't believe. This is a disbelief that's blamed on God. This is a disbelief that I want a sign so that I can believe. That's a little bit different from the doubt that we see in Thomas, the doubt that we've talked about, because it's not a forgive me my unbelief, right? It's a prove to me so that I don't have unbelief. So there's a difference there, right? These temple leaders and these Pharisees want proof. And Jesus is like, I've given you proof. You could have been listening to me. It's that you don't want to believe. You don't want to believe. And so Jesus has given them the proof. He's given the signs. He's given the teachings that fulfill the prophets, that fulfill the law. But they just don't want to believe. But the people who do believe follow Jesus. And Jesus has told us what we need to do in order to follow Jesus. The things that show that we are Jesus's sheep. The things that show that we do believe. And those things are what we're supposed to be doing. Those things show that we are our shepherd sheep. And when we do those, people will hopefully also hear his call and see his light, so that they can also believe and be followers. So when you're reading any of the apocalyptic texts, any of the things about the end times, remember that you will recognize Jesus, because you are Jesus's own. And Jesus knows you through and through. He's not going to mistake you for anybody else. Just like the shepherds don't mistake a sheep for another sheep. They know who they're supposed to have, and they know what that sheep needs. And you're going to follow Jesus if you know his voice and you are his sheep. Amen.